Every spring, millions of people wake up, drive to the garden store, spend money on seeds and soil, plant everything, nurse it all summer long and then watch it die when winter comes. And then they do it all over again next year. Same store, same seeds, same struggle. And nobody ever stops to ask, wait, who told me this was the only way? Because I'm going to tell you something that the seed companies absolutely do not want you to know. There are plants sitting in the ground right now, in backyards across Georgia, Jamaica, Mississippi, and Louisiana, that haven't been replanted in over 30 years. Same root, same ground, still feeding people. And the person who planted them? Gone. But the food is still there. So why are you still starting from zero every single spring? Welcome to Evergreen Garden Life. If this is your first time here, please like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me what time you are watching this. And make sure you hit that notification bell right now so you never miss out on information like this. Now let's get into it. Here is the thing that nobody in the mainstream gardening world wants to say out loud. The way most people grow food today was not designed to make you successful. It was designed to make you dependent. Dependent on seed companies every spring. Dependent on fertilizer bags every season. Dependent on the garden center down the road every single year without fail. And the worst part? Most people never even question it. They just accept the cycle because it is all they have ever been shown. Plant, grow, harvest, die, repeat. Plant, grow, harvest, die, repeat. Year after year after year. And every single year, the money leaves your pocket and goes right back into that system. But what if that cycle was never the only option? What if there was a completely different way to grow food? A way that does not reset every year. A way that gets stronger the longer you leave it alone. A way that your great-grandmother in Alabama or your auntie in Trinidad already knew about long before any garden center ever existed. That is exactly what we are talking about today. And by the time this video is over, you are going to understand why the shift from annual gardening to perennial gardening is not just a gardening decision. It is one of the most powerful financial and lifestyle decisions any food grower can make. Let's start from the very beginning so everyone is on the same page. An annual plant is a plant that lives for one growing season, and one growing season only. It sprouts, it grows, it produces food, and then it dies. Every single year. Think tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, beans, corn, peppers. You plant them in spring, you eat from them in summer, and the moment the first frost arrives, they are finished. Done. Gone. And the ground is empty again. So what do? You go back to the store. You buy more seeds. You prepare the soil all over again. You invest your time, your money, and your energy all over again. From zero. Every single spring. That is the annual gardening cycle. And for most people in America today, it is the only system they have ever known. Now here is where the conversation shifts. A perennial plant is something fundamentally different. A perennial plant lives for years, sometimes decades. You plant it once, the root system establishes itself underground, and then every single year that plant comes back on its own. No replanting, no reseeding, no starting over. The root is already there. It already knows what to do. It has done it before and it will do it again. You just show up, you harvest, and you walk back inside. That is it. And while that might sound too simple to be true, I want you to hold on to that thought because the numbers we are going to get into later in this video are going to make your jaw drop. Think about it this way. An annual garden is like renting an apartment. Every year the lease ends, you pack everything up, and you start the whole process over again. New deposit, new moving costs, new setup. And at the end of it all, you own nothing. A perennial garden is like buying a house. Yes, there is an upfront investment. Yes, it takes a little time to get established. But once it is yours, it pays you back every single year. The longer you hold it, the more valuable it becomes. And nobody can take it away from you at the end of the season. That is the fundamental difference between these two ways of growing food. One is a transaction. The other is an investment. And once you truly understand that difference, going back to the annual cycle will feel like choosing to rent forever when you could own. Now I want to talk about the real cost of staying in the annual system. Because most gardeners add up their seed costs and think they have a handle on what they are spending. But the true cost goes so much deeper than seeds. Every year that you garden annually, you are spending money on seeds or transplants, soil amendments, fertilizers, pest control products, and new mulch. You are spending physical energy tilling and turning beds that just got stripped of their nutrients again. You are losing weeks of harvest time every season because annual crops need time to establish before they produce anything. Those early weeks of summer when you are out there watering and waiting, your garden is running on empty. Nothing is coming out of it. Nothing is feeding you. And all of that empty time is costing you money at the grocery store while your beds sit there doing nothing. But here is the cost that almost nobody talks about. Every time you till your soil, every time you turn it over and disturb it in preparation for a new planting season, you are destroying something extraordinary that lives beneath your feet. Underneath healthy garden soil there is an entire living ecosystem. Billions of microorganisms. Fungal networks called mycorrhizae that stretch through the soil like invisible threads, connecting plant roots and delivering nutrients directly where they are needed. Earthworm communities that aerate and enrich the soil naturally. All of it working together in a system that took years to build. And every single time you run a tiller through that ground, you shatter that network completely. You set it back to square one. And then you have to rebuild it from scratch, only to destroy it again the following spring. That is what the annual cycle is really costing you. Not just money, not just time, but the living foundation that makes truly productive food growing is even possible. And if you are watching this right now and you have been gardening annually for years, I want you to really sit with that for a second. Because it means every season you have been working harder than you needed to. Every season you have been spending more than you needed to. And the land beneath your garden has been getting weaker instead of stronger. That is the honest truth about the annual trap. And the fact that most gardening content never tells you this is exactly why this channel exists. If you have not subscribed yet, I genuinely do not understand what you are waiting for. This is free information that could save you hundreds of dollars a year and completely transform how your garden performs. The people who subscribed to this channel weeks ago are already applying this. They are already making different decisions in their gardens. And you are still sitting on the fence. Subscribe right now. Turn on the bell. Because we are just getting to the part where everything starts to make sense. So how did we get here? How did the annual system become so dominant that most people do not even know another way exists? Because it was not always like this. There was a time, not even that long ago, when perennial food growing was not unusual or alternative or niche. It was just how people grew food. And nowhere is that more true than in Black communities across the American South and the Caribbean. Think about the grandmothers in rural Alabama and South Carolina, who kept sorrel patches that outlived them by decades. Think about the families in Louisiana who maintained fig trees, rhubarb crowns, and walking onion beds that passed from one generation to the next without a single replanting. Think about the communities in Jamaica and Trinidad who built their entire food systems around perennial crops that required almost no commercial input, no seed store, no annual investment. These were not people with extra time or extra money. These were people who understood something deep and practical about how food and land and time worked together. They planted things that lasted. They built food systems instead of food cycles. And generation after generation, the plants came back and the families ate. That knowledge did not disappear overnight. It got replaced. Slowly. Quietly. As industrial agriculture expanded through the 20th century, it brought with it an entire culture built around annual crops. Corn, soy, wheat, cotton, all annuals, all designed to be planted, harvested and replanted at commercial scale. The equipment was built for it. The chemicals were sold for it. The seed industry was structured around it. And as that model trickled down into home gardening culture, the garden centers started carrying the same annual varieties, the books and magazines were written around the same seasonal reset, and the old perennial food traditions started fading from household memory. Young people stopped learning what their grandmothers planted. The patches got dug up. The crowns got composted. And within a generation or two, entire libraries of practical food growing wisdom simply vanished from most families. What replaced it was a system that required a trip to the store every single spring. And I want you to think very carefully about who that benefits. Now here is where everything turns around. Because understanding the problem is only half of this conversation. The other half is understanding just how powerful the alternative really is. And the numbers here are not motivational fluff. These are real figures from real research that the mainstream gardening world consistently ignores. Let's start with asparagus. You buy 25 asparagus crowns, the root systems you plant directly in the ground. That costs you somewhere between $15 and $25 total. You plant them once. The first year you leave them alone and let the roots establish. The second year you take a light harvest. By year 5 you are harvesting for 6 to 8 full weeks every spring. By year 7, those 25 crowns are producing roughly 12.5 pounds of asparagus per season. Asparagus at the grocery store runs $3 to $6 per pound. That means your $20 investment is generating $75 to over $100 worth of fresh asparagus every single spring. And it keeps doing that for 20 to 30 years. From one planting. One time. That is not gardening. That is a 30-year return on a $20 investment. Now look at sorrel. Fresh sorrel is nearly impossible to find in American grocery stores. When it does appear at a farmer's market or specialty grocer, it commands $4 to $6 for a small bunch. A packet of sorrel seeds costs $2 to $3 and establishes a perennial plant that comes back every year for a decade or more. One purchase. 10 or more years of harvests. From a plant that grocery stores can barely keep on their shelves. And then there is the Jerusalem artichoke, also called the sunchoke, which is a wild perennial sunflower native to North America, and a staple food in indigenous and black southern food traditions for centuries. A University of Oregon study found that sunchokes can yield nearly 64,000 pounds per acre without irrigation. For comparison, conventional potato farming in the same region yields around 53,000 pounds per acre with full irrigation inputs. The perennial crop wins. Without water. Without replanting. Without starting over. Every single year. These are not edge cases. These are what happens when you stop renting your garden and start owning it. So what do you actually do with all of this? How do you start making the shift right now, today, without tearing up your entire garden? And beginning from scratch. Because the good news is you do not need to overhaul anything. You just need to start making one different decision at a time. The first step is to pick one corner or one edge of your growing space and dedicate it to a single perennial plant this season. Just one area. Start with asparagus if you want the clearest return on investment. Start with sorrel if you want something low maintenance that produces almost immediately. Start with chives or walking onions if you want something that practically takes care of itself and multiplies on its own every year. The specific plant matters less than the decision to begin. One perennial plant in the ground this season is the beginning of a food system that will still be feeding you in 30 years. The second step is to talk to the oldest person in your family who ever grew food, and ask them what was already in the ground when they moved in. Ask them what came back every year without being replanted. Ask them what their mother grew, what their grandmother kept. Because the answers to those questions are not just family history. They are a map to the most productive, most resilient, most locally adapted food plants you could possibly grow in your specific region. That knowledge is worth more than any seed catalog ever printed. The third step is to stop tilling. I know that feels uncomfortable if tilling has been part of your gardening routine for years. But every time that tiller goes through your beds, you are breaking apart the underground ecosystem your plants need to truly thrive. Start mulching instead. Cover your soil with straw, wood chips, or fallen leaves. Let the worms do the work beneath the surface. Within 1 or 2 seasons you will see the difference in your soil and in your plants in a way that no bag of fertilizer has ever delivered. Here is the truth that this entire video has been building toward. Planting once and eating for 30 years is not a fantasy. It is not a marketing promise. It is what happens when you stop thinking about your garden as a seasonal project and start thinking about it as a living, growing, compounding asset. Every perennial plant you put in the ground today is a decision that your future self will thank you for. Every season you wait is another year of growth you did not plant. The grandmothers in Georgia and Louisiana who still have walking onion beds and rhubarb crowns that are older than their grandchildren did not get there by accident. They got there because at some point, someone made a decision to plant something that would last. And then time did the rest. You have that same opportunity right now. Not next spring. Right now. And before you click away, I need to say something directly to you. If you watched this entire video and you still have not subscribed to Evergreen Garden Life, I want you to think about what that means. Every week this channel puts out content that challenges everything you thought you knew about growing food. Content rooted in tradition, backed by real research, and designed to actually change how you eat, how much you spend, and how connected you are to the land beneath your feet. The people who subscribed months ago are already thinking differently. They are already planning perennial beds. They are already sharing this information with their families and their communities. And every week that you watch without subscribing is another week of that knowledge passing you by. Hit the subscribe button right now. Turn on the notification bell. Share this video with one person who grows food or wants to, because this kind of knowledge does not belong locked away in algorithms and search results. It belongs in every backyard, every community garden, and every kitchen that has ever wanted to be truly free. In the next video on this channel, we are going deeper. We are going plant by plant through the most productive, most beginner-friendly, most overlooked perennial vegetables you can grow right now, with exact costs, exact yields, and exact timelines. You do not want to miss it. The garden is waiting.